Greetings, my brothers and sisters, sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on this one time on Psychedelics. One of the main aspects that I love most about connecting with psychedelic medicines is their ability to truly show us what we're made of, and in doing so, give us the opportunity to obliterate perceived obstacles in our lives and live our lives to the fullest long after the medicine is worn off. Today's guest on the show is someone who, since he has last been on, has been a beacon of this ability in action in his world record-breaking run across the entire continent of Australia from end to end to support veterans and raise awareness for suicide prevention. And trust me when I say that although this is an incredible feat, that it is only the latest in his lifetime of accomplishments. In this episode, we will be diving into his recent experiences with psychedelic medicines, what role, if any, his psychedelic experiences played in him being able to conquer his world record run, and what he hopes to see with regards to psychedelic medicines being offered in Australia for veteran health. So please, help me in welcoming back my man, William Burnett, for round 2 to the show. Will, my man, what's up, bro? Tell us about, this world record setting run. How many records did you break as well? Get into that, because it was more than one, if I remember correctly, when I read your post.
Yeah, so originally when I started the project, I'd set out to break 10 records. I'd gone through Guinness World Records and just looked at what would be applicable to what I was doing. And, at the time, it's like being a kid in a candy store. It's just like everything's shiny. You want to ingest absolutely everything you possibly can. But with that, inherently, you take on the energy of what that holds, right? And so, at the point of time when I was about to take off, 7th of September last year, I'd sat down and gone through what I was looking to achieve personally, what I was looking to achieve holistically. And I made a choice, an intentional choice to not apply for the 10 that I'd specifically sought after originally. And I chose 3 specifically, right? And the 3 records that I broke were basically around gender specificity as well. So there's records for men and women, and then there's obviously the overall record itself. And so my records were largely around completing the most consecutive ultra marathons in a row, which ended up being 81 consecutive ultra marathons. It took me from the west coast of Australia in a little town called Margaret River. It's it's a beautiful little surf town, flooded with vineyards, beautiful vineyards, wildlife, the wildlife of Australia. Like if you're a kid in America and you're becoming privy to the wildlife of Australia, which is usually where the death stories begin. But I promise you, it's not that. They all exist in this one town, which is absolutely beautiful. But I took off from Margaret River and I started my journey. First day was a 56-kilometer, and thereon after I was averaging around 55 to 65K a day, depending on how I felt, depending on the terrain, depending on the environment. And from there, I made my way all the way across Australia from west to east coast, the most eastern point in a town called Byron Bay, which is just on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. And Byron Bay is quite an extravagant little surf town as well. It's pretty popular now in Australia. Like when COVID hit, everybody seemed to move from the south end of Australia all the way up to Byron and then on to the Gold Coast, which is where I reside now. But it was cool to end there because for me, Byron Bay holds a special place. It's where my wife and I got married. We'd spend, a fair bit of time on there when we were nomadic. We'd take the kids up there and we'd live there for 10 plus weeks. And it's just a beautiful bohemian little town. It's got all the cafes, it's got all the nature, plenty of surf beaches, which is my priority as well. And it's such a quaint, peaceful vibration to live in because most people who are there, they get it. They've moved from some part of the country because of whatever it was, and they're like, I need to go find my people. And it just so happens that places like Byron Bay are where that exists.
That's amazing, man. That's so cool. And, I mean, there's so much we can get into there that we will get into. But, I think the first thing is the fact that with Australia, there are so many different challenges that one faces when they're going to run across any continent, but especially Australia. I mean, there's so many different things that people hear about that can kill you and all these different things. So one of the things I'm curious on right off the bat is your mindset, which I know has been built on many other things besides just psychedelic experiences. But do you see a connection with how your run went compared to how you've been able to move through psychedelic experiences, especially with breath work as well, right? You've had a lot of experience with breath work, and that's a huge part of controlling your nervous system. Tell us a little bit about how those types of things, psychedelics, breath work, holistic living, et cetera, played into your ability to be able to run across Australia and run pretty much a marathon a day, I think is what you were doing, right? 26.2 miles or above per day.
Ultra marathon. So I imagine 40 something miles on your end. Yeah. Look, wow. It's interesting, wow. Man, you asked that and no one's really ever, people have asked me, how did this project come about? And there are many reasons, as you've stated, but the first moment, which is the one that stuck with me this whole time, and it's like the mile marker to where I started this experiment, where I put together all my research over the previous 4 years that I'd been training and working inside of the body, both with psychedelics, breathwork, meditation, sacred geometry. And there's this one morning where we used to live on the southeast coast of Victoria. We just left there up before our first episode that we did. And most mornings, I would have my process. I'd have my routine of grounding, connecting to myself. And this would all happen before the sun come up. And then if I chose to sit with cannabis and or a microdose of psilocybin, that would come near on after my routine. And then I'd take a walk barefooted to the beach. I'd walk my dog down there. And I would sit at the beach and simply stare at the ocean and watch the sun come up. Now, for those that know, when you sit with cannabis or psilocybin or even LSD and you sit and watch the sun come up, it's a magical moment to experience, and a lot can unpack and unfurl in that. And this one particular morning that I went down, I was barefoot. It was quite cold. I'd smoked some cannabis and I took my dog down there. And we were sitting there. She was really, really placid, which is odd because she's a part wolf, part husky. So she's quite energetic. She's very prey driven. Her and I met in the cosmos as well prior to me, receiving her into my life. But she was placid this one morning and I was feeling it too. And so we're sitting there, we're watching the sun come up, and out of nowhere, I feel this urge to close my eyes, connect to the earth, and simply listen. And I was tuning in to what was present inside of me, both in my nervous system, my biology, my consciousness. And this huge thundering voice just comes in. Welcome, Will. It's good to see you, brother. And it was like nothing that I'd ever experienced before. And as you know, I've sat with many plant medicine psychedelics and done a lot of work in integration, but this was unlike any other moment. And as the voice continued, it continued to describe to me what my journey would look like for the next 3 years. And listening in, the characteristics that I could pick up was essentially my soul connecting to its archives, right? Connecting to the work that it needs to do here on this timeline right now. The long and short of it is, when I finished that meditation, I got up and I was starting my walk back to the house. It's about a 5 to 6 minute walk, depending on how many times my dog Solar had to stop. But I walk in the door, and in that very moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I was guided to run across the country. I was guided to put all of my research and study into a physical experiment to test all variables and objectives. And when I walked in the door and I opened the door, my wife was in the kitchen. She was prepping some coffee, and she looks at me and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, she knew straight away, like she knew something was coming that was large. And I say, "Babe, I got to talk to you about something." She's like, "Okay, what is it?" And I say, "Well, I just had this experience down at the beach." I describe it to her and she goes, "Okay, so what does it mean?" I say, "Well, I'm going to run across the country." "Across Australia?" "Yes, across Australia." "Okay, when?" And I'm like, I'm still working that out, but it's going to be in the near future, and I'm going to do it in this way. I said, also, we're going to sell this house and we're going to buy a camper trailer, and we're going to live on the road in this process. And that really hit her, because I just spent, a year purchasing the land, clearing the land, building the house, doing all this myself alongside my father. And I'd done that so that we could birth our daughter. And we did. We birthed our daughter in the house with our soul sister, who coincidentally happened to be at our house the night that Cass went into labor, which was 5 weeks early. And
wow.
When I said that to her, that we were going to leave, she obviously had some emotional attachment to the place, to the land, to the experiences that had unfolded in the house. And to her credit, and still to this day, she's not changed her pattern. Like, she said, "Okay, I trust you. Let's allow this to settle and integrate, and let's continue this conversation." And so we continued that conversation over the following week, and I started to discover how possible it actually was, not because of the things I was looking at or studying, but simply looking at who had done it, what they'd done, how they'd done it, where I was at physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. And so thereon began the journey. And what's cool about that is, prior to that moment, as I said, I'd worked with plenty plant medicines. I'd worked with plenty of psychedelics, and I'd allowed myself the capacity to integrate the lessons that come through in those ceremonies or those downloads. But this one was like this is a big one. Like, this is a big shift in consciousness. This is a big shift in my biology, and essentially putting my money where my mouth was, where my words were, And so over the following 3 years from that moment onwards, I, like a mad scientist, which I am, I'm a geeky scientist. I love getting in the lab and working with these types of things. But I started building this project, and not only was I cognizant of the fact that I needed to run an ultra marathon a day, so I had to bring my physical capacity up for that, my conditioning up for that, but I was starting to piece together a framework or an experiment with hypotheses, testing different parts of my study and research, what I believe to be true, my theories, and then bringing in all the variables that would test those theories. Everything from the wildlife to the environment and the climate to the traffic to the duration and where my body could potentially be at in those moments, to support, food, water, finances, all of it. All of it was on the table, and it was all to be looked at. Also, what's funny about that is, after about 7 months of planning, we got on the road, we'd sold our house, and we bought a caravan, and we bought a car to tow the caravan, and all of it was happening. I'd gone down to a friend's house south of where we'd stopped for our first location to live at. And when I went down there, he's a very, very close friend of mine, and I took my soul sister down, who was there with us when we birthed Willow. And we spent 3 days together on this ranch in the bush, and each day we would sit with one medicine. And at night we would have like a integration ceremony around the fire, open up a portal, and allow everything to be what it was. On one of the last nights, actually it was the last night, because after this occurred, we took off the next day, but we were sitting around the fire. I'd had a pretty heavy dose of psilocybin, around a 7 to 8 gram dose of psilocybin. I'm not as sensitive to psilocybin anymore, just from the work that I've done, and different strains obviously hit a bit different, but more often than not, I have the right tools and am able to surrender to whatever the strength or potency of the strain, where they were grown, who grew them. But this one night, it hit really, really hard. And I was laying there, and I said to her, I'm just going to lay down. I think something's coming up, and I just want to be grounded and held by the earth and all, like, you and your energy, and have this release. She said, okay, cool. And so I lay down, and my foot goes in the fire, and it must have been there for at least a minute, maybe a little more than a minute. And I come to, like, my consciousness comes back online, and I'm like, something's wrong. I've been bitten by a snake, or something's happened. And I say to her, I think I've been bitten by a snake. She's like, there's no snakes around here. And she looks at my foot and she's like, oh shit, you've just put your foot in the fire. How long have you had it there? I said, I don't know. Like I was out of it. And she said, okay, cool. Are you okay? Yes. And we had another few people there as well who were with us in the ceremony. And instantly their reflexive response was, fuck, we got to get him to a hospital. What does that mean? He's just taking mushrooms. Like all of these things were happening. And so I put them at ease and I was like, hey guys, just relax. Allow me to work through this. I want to be in this right now. Allow me to work through this. I had 3rd-degree burns on my left foot. All of my toes were almost gone. Like I should have lost 3 of them. I said, allow me to be in this. And she's very in tune. She's a at-home holistic midwife. She knows the power of the body, and she knows how to move with energy and transfer energy and all of the things. So we go inside. We wrap my foot in like a gauze or like a rag or something, and just holding it. And I spend like 3 hours just tuning into my body with breath, like really following the breath of what my body wanted to do. But there was like a separation. I hadn't disassociated, but there was a separation. My consciousness had gone, okay, yes, this thing has occurred, and the natural reflex is your body wants to go into shock. And I could feel that process occurring. I could feel the flood of chemicals coming from my head down into the body, trying to prep it for shock. But at the same time, I was like, wow, I have a lot of control right now. And so like getting in a fancy car and turning on the ignition going, wow, look at this power. I had the same thing. I was like, okay, let's breathe into this. And so I start breathing into it, using the breath as a vehicle to regulate my nervous system, bring my nervous system back down. And I start transmuting and offloading all of this energy that was coming through my body. And she says, is it okay if I channel some of that and help you? I said, fucking, you bet it is. Like, so she puts her hand on my foot and her other hand on the top of my leg, and we start transmuting it. And all I could see, because I was still pretty, like, the mushrooms were still on board, so I was like still in it, but all I could see in the room was just like this light just beaming out of my body and just going into the room. And I cheekily say to her, hey, we better clean that up in the morning. She's just like laughing at me because I'm supposed to be in shock. Like my foot has just been burnt, and I'm just like completely in the process. And we go to sleep. I have a great sleep. And then the next morning I wake up. It's kind of painful. Like I can feel it's there. But at the same time, I say to her, I think we need to go. I think we need to leave this land, and we need to go back home and reestablish what's on offer here. Because for me, my focus was like, oh shit, I can't run. Like I couldn't even walk. Like my foot was wrapped. They were bubbled, and definitely share photos if you're open to it later. But I was just worried about the run, you know, like shit, I'm not going to be able to run. I'm going to have to put everything back. And that taught me so much, because there started the experiment. That's where the experiment started, of all my studies and all my research and all the theories that I had on how we can control our nervous system and regulate stress and heal our bodies. That's when it began. And, 8 weeks later, I was back to running full marathons, and that's a 6 to 8 month recovery on medicine, like on Western medicine, not plant medicines. And so, in 8 weeks, I had gone from doing breath work 2 to 3 hours a day, healing my foot, utilizing different types of oils and medicinal plants to help with inflammation and fight off infection. 8 weeks later, I'm back to running. And that's where the experiment started. And that's why I knew going into the run, I was like, oh yeah, it's going to get tough. I'm probably going to hate a fair bit of it, but I know that I have absolute power. And what these plants were teaching me was, beyond the veil of my preconditioned ideas of society or how I think we should be, there was this next level that I could access, and I experienced it firsthand. And so the paradox here is, even though I was sober throughout the whole run, prior to the run, everything was a application or administration of plant medicines, integrating that while still having my own research on board to discover what was truly possible. And so it's a powerful tool, man. It was a powerful moment, powerful part of the journey, and it stays with me. Like that's that's the milestone now. Like if I'm falling back to anything, I'm falling back to that moment, and it's like, oh yeah, we're sweet. We're sweet.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. Dude, that is amazing, man. I mean, it's so amazing to hear this because when you came out to California, you shared a good amount of that story with me, but a lot of those details I had never heard before. And it just speaks to the strength of the human body, and it speaks to the resilience that we truly have within us. And what a great gift to have happen, right? Again, some people might say a gift, but it's like, listen, it happened, right? So you can't go back and change that. So we can either look at it as, oh, woe is me, victim mentality, et cetera, or we can do what you did and say, hey, you know what? This thing happened. How do I move forward and how do I keep going and what can I learn from it? And especially embarking on such a ridiculous adventure that you were going to embark on very soon after that, this run across Australia, what an amazing opportunity to test your strength and be like, dude, if I can put my fucking foot in the fire for a good amount of time and heal from that by connecting with my breath and really honing into my own power, well, then you know what? I'm completely fit to be able to do this run, and this is exactly why one of the many reasons I wanted to have you back on the show, right? Because I think for a lot of people, I never wanted this show to just be about the psychedelics themselves, because although they're amazing, these plants, they don't want us to worship them, right? They're like, dude, what are you going to do as a result of connecting with me? That's what I want to see, right? It's almost like how if with your parents, right? Or any family members, they don't want you to worship them forever, right? When you're a child, yeah, you're going to worship your parents and things like that. But eventually they're like, go do something in the world, go make me proud, right? And so I really feel these plants are the same way. And that's where I feel that if they could have a voice here right now, they would say, hey, make the show about what people do as a result of connecting with us, equally as a result of talking about them and things like that, And so it's amazing to get these insights as to what is possible in the body. And also what I want to, articulate here for people too is Will's not saying that he was only that strong because he ate mushrooms. He was saying that he's that strong because plant medicines and other things that he's done have allowed him to actually tap into that. And then he's been able to integrate it to know that he can tap into that, those aspects anytime he wants, And so that's a really good skill set to have, because again, what I choose to believe is that plant medicines are only showing us what is already possible, but beyond the limitations that we currently have in our life with regards to limiting beliefs, limiting stories, dysfunctional patterns, programs, et cetera, and so it's amazing that happened. And so, I'm curious for you, there's so much we could dive into when it comes to your journey, but, there is one thing that I think would be really funny to talk about, right? So you mentioned wildlife in Australia, and I'm actually a gentleman that's in Connect with Cannabis right now. He's in Australia. And so last week he was at some breathwork event and he was on the call and he was like, guys, check it out. And there was kangaroos, right? So, of course, me being the American guy, I got to ask. So when you were running across Australia, right? Did you come into any contact with wildlife that was a challenge, right? Not just oh, that's cool. Was there any challenges? And if so, right, how did these abilities that you have, right, that maybe psychedelics opened up, maybe you already had, and psychedelics just strengthen whatever, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg comes first. But how did these abilities help you maintain nervous system, maintain control, maintain a down-regulated nervous system state?
It's funny, man, because the animal stories you'd hear from Australia, it's biggest and deadliest snakes in the world. Yeah, sure, we do, definitely. And I saw them. Spiders that can eat your face and kill you. Yeah, 100% they're here too. And, what's super interesting is those weren't the ones that I were fearful of, prior to my engagement with plant medicines, 7+ years ago, I was petrified of snakes and spiders, absolutely petrified. And for anyone listening, when you come to Australia, or if you are in Australia, you should be. They are dangerous and they can kill you. But just like with anything, like we are part of nature. Like our relationship with animals and the environment that we live in, we should be living in a symbiotic relationship where everything is, feeding itself and perpetuating energetically, or we're living in symbiosis. And for me, that has become very present because every time I've tapped into a psychedelic medicine, it's the first thing that happens to me. I feel the energy of the space that I'm in, because I choose nature more often than not. I feel the energy of the space that I'm in. I can distinctly tell the communication from birds in the trees and what they're communicating. I can see when more animals start to flock in because I can tell that, oh, there's a human and he's just tapped into another dimension and this is probably a good chance where he can understand us right now. And so they start to come in real close. And I noticed that. And so that happened to me in the very early stages of my experience with psychedelics. And now inherently I have that a part of me. So even when I'm not working with the plants, I am cognizant of how I'm engaging in my environments, whether it's man-made or real, part of nature. Coming across Australia, for a large part of it, I would say 70 to 80% is quite desolate. Like it's a desert, and there's greenery and the shrubs and all of those things, but it is a desert. There's not much. Like the townships are 200 plus Ks between each other. So, there's not much in terms of infrastructure. There's roadhouses and maybe a grocery store if you're lucky. Some of the bigger towns obviously are a bit more built up. But in that space is where most of Australia's wildlife are, quite healthy. Like the ecosystem is quite healthy. They are reliant upon the weather systems and they've adapted to that over the hundreds of years. They are reliant upon whatever else is within that vicinity. I saw huge snakes. Like there was a taipan and a tiger snake that was over 10 feet long, and I'd run past them or I'd have to jump over them at the last minute because I wasn't focusing on looking for snakes. I was focusing on not getting hit by a road train. And so I'd have to jump over them. And those moments, I'd look back and I'd stop in my run and I'd be like, I used to be scared of snakes. I used to be scared of spiders. And in all my plant medicine ceremonies that I've sat with, spiders and snakes, their spirits are always very present. So I have this sense of calm around them now and this appreciation and respect. And jumping over these snakes, I'd look back and I'd go, first thing, it's typical Australian, fuck, that's a big snake. And I'd look back and be like, okay, yep, that's a big snake. How do I feel about that? And not scared, no fear, cool. Is it coming after me? No, it's not. Okay. It's basking in the sun. It's just getting some sun. You look at it further and it's like just had a big meal and you can see it's got this large body inside of it. It's probably eating like a baby kangaroo or a rabbit or something like that, And so they're not there to attack me. This is their home and I'm coming through their home. And so with all the respect, it'd be like, okay, yep. And I'd communicate often. This could be part of the delirium or this could be me having absolute awareness of where I fit in the chain of things. But I'd stop and go, hey, sir, thank you for not biting me. Hope you have a good rest of the day. And I'd keep moving on. Like these are the kind of conversations I'd have with snakes or big spiders or whatever it is. The kangaroos, not so much. You find they're pretty violent around golf courses, and it's probably because they get hit a lot or try to get run over by golf carts, but they're quite attitudinal. But the thing that really, really hit me, there was two things. I'd connected with this gentleman on the East Coast. He obviously saw my profile and he'd reached out. He was an ultra runner himself. He'd run like silly distances across Australia and across the world. He had a couple records of his own. And he's like, hey, man, I just want to share some magic with you because when I ran through Australia, this happened to me. So I'm interested to hear if it happens to you too. And he says to me, next time you're in some meditative zone, tune in and see if you can hear any music. And me being the music guy and breathwork music guy, I was like, okay. I was listening to music most days, indoor books and podcasts. So this one day I took my headphones out and I ran for about 7 or 8 hours and I tuned in and what I could hear was the frequency and vibration of the land. And what it sounded like to me, and this could be my bias conditioning, but what it sounded like to me was the music of the traditional custodians of that land. So I could hear didgeridoos. I could hear, dancing around the fire. I could hear the native tongue of whoever that tribe was that lived or is in that land. And after a few weeks, that becomes so present that it was almost overwhelming in my ears because I was so connected. One specific day I'm running along, and I never ever thought this would happen, Ryan, but there was one specific day I'm running along, and there's this flock of emus running alongside me. They're pretty quick. They're a flightless bird, but they're pretty quick. Also very savage. Didn't know that, but very savage. And they're running along, and I'm like, okay, tune in. Can I hear any music? Can I hear any sounds? Yes. What's it guiding me to do? And then all of a sudden, I hear this call from the front bird. It must have been the masculine figure of the tribe, of the flock, and it's like yelling out at me, stay over there. Don't come near my family. Stay over there. Ack, yes, sir. I'll stay over here. You stay over there. Run together. Happy to join you for today's run. Cool, cool. And then all of a sudden, one of the middle birds just kind of freaks out, and this baby one comes from underneath it, and the chick starts running off in another direction, and it chases after it. Now the chick runs across the road about 300 meters up the road from me, runs across the road to the other side. The flock's still over here. What I'm assuming is the mother takes off after it, but by that stage I've gotten closer to where the crossing occurred. She stops on that side, the baby's on this side, and I'm like, fuck. I don't know what to do here, but this is pretty scary, and she starts squawking at me. I can hear the male at the front squawking at me as well. And I stop. I remain present. I actually get down lower. I put my hand to the ground in the dirt. I place my hand on the dirt, trying to communicate through the earth. And I give it permission to just go, hey, go look after your baby. I get it. I'm a dad. I have kids. Go look after your baby. I will stay here. I will not do anything. And the whole flock turns and looks at me. And I'm like, okay, remain calm. Feel my nervous system started to be triggered. Start breathing deeper into my body. Connect deeper to the earth, trying to send light and love through my arm into the earth. They turn around. They're looking at me. She casually strolls across the road, goes over to the chick, kind of gives it a nudge and goes, come on, idiot, come back over here. They both walk back across the road, back to the flock. They turn, they start running. I start jogging. And then out of nowhere, the big one stops. The whole flock stops. He comes back a couple steps, looks at me, does this head thing, turns around, and they just sprint off. And I'm just like, that was the scariest fucking thing I've ever experienced in my life. And it was the most beautiful thing because of the communication that was occurring, or what I thought was occurring, and I imagine did occur. And so, when you think about the animals of Australia, you think snakes, spiders, all of these things that can kill you. You never think that an emu is going to tear your fucking face off. You never think that that could occur. And that was a possibility, but due to the very nature of me tuning into nature and creating and reminding myself and them, hey, we live here together. This is your land. I'm just transiting through. Would appreciate your grace to be able to move through and your blessing. And that happened. So for me, I'm like, if that can happen there, where else can that happen? Where else in life can that occur? And so it leaves a person to ponder. And so the next month of me running, I was just so cognizant of the animals. And more often than not, I could tell when a bird was coming or when it was going to swoop. If I needed answers or guidance, black cockatoos would swoop in and let me know what to do. And so it was quite a beautiful experience.
Dude, I mean, what I heard there too is everything is a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? So like you were saying, like if I can do this here, right? If I can tune in here, where else can I do this? I think that's extremely wise because, how we do anything is how we do everything, right? And ideally, like, what do we train for, right? Why do we go to the gym, right? Why do we do emotional work? Why do we have coaches? Why do we do any of this? Well, it's kind of like our prep stage for when a bunch of emus start following you, right? And you got to like make sure you got to bring all the tools out and essentially like put that training to use, right? Now, again, it's not that like some of us might train our whole lives and never have a situation like that happen, but isn't it better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it? that's the ultimate quote unquote argument, if you will, for any of what we're talking about when it comes to psychedelics, when it comes to all these things, right? It's like, it's better to really know what you're made of, so that if a situation presents itself in the sense that you have to figure out real quick what you're made of, at least you have a pretty good idea beforehand, you know? And I imagine that helped a lot, and has helped a lot, even in returning to normal life after that, you know? And, you know, I think all of these experiences very similar to like what Mark England says, right? He says, what's the only thing that separates an amateur from a professional? Reps, right? So whether it's breath work, psychedelics, making sure you don't get eaten by emu, right? Or any of these things, right? Like, they're all a certain rep to ensure that our nervous system, like that we are in control of our nervous system. Like, yes, the body will do what it does. The amygdala, all these different parts of our brain and body, they will do what they do. But in all of that, we have the ultimate say if we have control of our consciousness to be able to actually downregulate and come back into homeostasis. You know, it's not that we can ever stop the reaction, but we can stop it right after the reaction happens, right? Like, for instance, you know, there's been times where I think a lot of people will resonate with this. Like, if you hear something go bump in the night and you start walking downstairs and you feel your nervous system starting to up level, you can start breathing into it, right? So your nervous system did its thing, right? But now you can say either I'm going to get this under control, or you can freak out, right? And whether or not there's anyone actually there, the best way to actually handle that is to downregulate and go see what's going bump in the night, you know? And so I think that, like, you know, it's so important to be able to have these skills, because again, like, if you want to do some really cool shit in life, it's important that you have techniques under your belt that can allow you to keep your nervous system in check. So I love that, man. It's a great story. And, you know, since returning from this run, right? Since returning from this like epic adventure, first of all, even though this is a psychedelic podcast, I am genuinely curious, and I bet everyone else is, how long did it take you to acclimate back to like, oh, I woke up and I don't have to run an ultra marathon today? Like, how long did that take? And then I'll move into my next part of this podcast.
It took me a week. I thought it was going to take me a lot longer. People were telling me, like, especially ultra veterans that I knew were like, yeah, you're going to need to give your body and your mind a break for at least minimum 6 to 8 weeks. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take advice from people that know. That's cool. But, you know, a week after I finished running, I said to my wife, what's the next thing? And she's like, well, we got to think about Christmas first and the kids. I said, okay, cool. I can do that. You know, I can focus on that. And I had my kids with me the whole way across the country. Like, it was me, my wife, my kids, and then my support team, which was one of my best friends. And so very, very small team, still playing dad role, still playing husband role, and then still doing the ultra marathon a day. And so for me, it was quite smooth and integrating back in that. Obviously, you know, I was having some physical things occur that I needed to work through, but I was back running after a week, not long distance, but just going for light jogs. I was back training, lifting weights again, because I really missed that while I was running. You know, it was 3.5 months. But it took me a week, and psychologically, I would say 3 days I was ready to go, but I gave myself a week to be in it and be in the process and simply observe what my environment was trying to signal me to do.
Wow. That's amazing, man. And, you know, it's really cool because also like that speaks to your health as well. Like, to be able to not only accomplish a feat like that, but also be able to say within 3 days, like, I could definitely go back to it right now. But, you know, being aware enough to give yourself that week is really cool. And, you know, I'm curious for you, like, once you return home from that experience, like, have you sat with any psychedelics since? And if so, what has your experience been? Did you notice any differences? And of course, like, you know, with most psychedelic experiences, you're going to get the medicine that you need at that particular time. But have you noticed any interesting phenomenon since returning back and sitting with any of these medicines, including cannabis or tobacco or any medicine?
Yeah. So when I finished the run, a week later, I flew to Amsterdam to finish my studies with my mentor. And it was a 6-day retreat in Amsterdam. And most days we're microdosing truffles, which was really cool. But halfway through the retreat, he comes down and we're really close. Me and a couple of brothers are really close with our mentor. I'm quite a tight tribe there. But he comes down in the morning, we're sipping ceremonial cacao. And he says to us, hey, do you want some cactus? And we're like, oh, shit. Sure. Let's go for it. Like, I trust him. He's a plant medicine facilitator, a very popular and sought after one. I trust him. I knew that he'd brewed it. I knew that he'd grown and cultivated it. And so I had no hesitation there. The only hesitation I had was, okay, what about I just finished doing this thing? What is that going to bring up for me? I don't know if I want to have a huge cathartic release in the middle of the retreat in front of everybody. And at the same time, I caught myself thinking that. I said, what fucking better place to have a huge release than with 20 other individuals who are about to cuddle puddle you to death so that you can be held safe and secure to have this thing. And so I said, yeah, sweet, let's go. So we were microdosing mescaline for 3 days, which ended up being absolutely beautiful. And I mean, anyone who sat with, the grandfather spirit, like it's such a nurturing medicine. It just like holds you and embraces you and really gives you the opportunity to identify what the masculine energy is inside of you. And then having that observation or awareness of masculine energy inside of you, obviously exponentially gives awareness to the feminine energy inside of you also. And so I left that retreat just so grounded, so sure of what the next chapter was for me. And when I hit the ground running here in Australia, when I returned, I'd created a relationship with my now business partner, and he's a very, very close brother. It was like, holy shit, I had no idea there was another version of me in the world. This is him. And we connected straight away. We connected through the run, and we were talking about things. We connected straight away. And ever since then, we've made it a practice, part of our business practice. So instead of going to sit at a cafe and have a deep meaning about systems and verticals and all of the procedures that make our business flourish and be as great as it is, we take Fridays and we've called it Fun Guy Fridays. So we take some psilocybin and we go find a rainforest, indoor waterfall. You've probably seen them on my Instagram now. So anytime you've seen me at a waterfall, just know I'm dosed and experiencing some things. But the reason we chose to do that, there's a couple, but the two main reasons was both for me and him to connect deeper, because this is our life's purpose. The work we're doing now with men and moving forward in our business, My Next Stop, this is our life's purpose. This is like the run was part of it, and it's given us information to download and integrate. So Fridays becomes this ceremony of us going out to get the information from the tree of knowledge so that we can bring it back to the tribe and give the download to the tribe. And on Fridays, when we have Fungi Fridays, we take, 3 to 4 grams of psilocybin, different strains. So I've got these chocolates that we've been working with, which are beautiful. There's a B plus, Golden Teachers, Penis Envy. There's a few strains that we've worked with there. But what's been great about those experiences, and I've been working with cannabis as well, as I've said to you prior to the show, like my mom bakes these beautiful brownies. Like they're just absolutely stunning. The plant that's grown, I know where it's grown. I know how it's grown. I know the energy that goes into it. I've been working with them to get into flow state. So if I'm having days where I might be feeling a little weighed down from energy, whether it's external or my own, and it's dense and I want to process it and integrate it as well as stay in flow state so I'm productive and optimized, I'll sit with cannabis. But these psilocybin journeys that we've been taking on Fridays are like, because I have those tools now and that awareness of nature and the symbiotic relationship we have and the macrocosm engagement that I have, Fridays becomes this opportunity to just be like, open the world up to potentiality and working with the laws of potentiality and bringing in and calling in the things that are going to help move this mission forward in the direct path that it needs to. Now what I'm finding, because I've been working with another protocol, which we won't dive into today, but we will connect on this, Ryan, you and I, been working with this other protocol, is tapping into my soul's archives. So like the Akashic records and working inside there and really getting an understanding of what my soul's purpose is on this timeline. And Fridays have become a practice of that. I've been able to access these archives, bring back information, and know that the following week I'm able to integrate, implement, and show up as this man, this husband, this father, and have the lessons there to integrate. Like our friend Alex, he put something up on Instagram the other week where he says, everybody wants to go do ayahuasca, but no one wants to stay around, clean the dishes, right? Or do the dishes. And for me, like the doing the dishes part's my favorite part, because it's like, yeah, okay, sitting with plant medicine is a great, beautiful experience. Sometimes they're tough, but they're always beautiful. But the epic part is when you get to integrate it and you have the lesson that you didn't have prior, and now this lesson, when integrated, makes you this better human. Like, what else is better than that? You know, what else is better than becoming a higher version of yourself? I'm yet to find something that's better.
Absolutely, man. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that like that, especially I would say like, you know, as a man, I mean, we can speak to masculine energy. And I think for men, like there's nothing more rewarding than looking to be a better version of yourself than you were today, yesterday, et cetera, right? Not because you're less than today, but because how much fun is it to see how much better you could possibly feel, right? Like I try to remind myself each morning that even though this day seems normal, I'm waking up at a very similar time. I know what inner work I'm going to go do. I know what time I'm going to have a beautiful espresso with my partner. Even though things look similar, how do I know this day, right? This Thursday, March 2nd, is not going to be the day where I find a whole new level of joy or a whole new aspect of myself that maybe I had shut out for a long time? How do I know, right? And the whole idea here is to pattern interrupt myself into realizing like, actually, I'll never know. I don't know. And if I can remember that and really tune into that, then every day is unique. Because I think that one of the challenges of the modern day world too, especially for men, is mundaneness. People might associate things like washing the dishes or anything with that. And so it's important to notice that like you're not, it's kind of like that quote where a man can't walk in the same river twice because he's not the same man and it's not the same river. And so like it's very similar to washing the dishes. You can never wash the dishes the same way twice. And if your mind is telling you that, oh, this is just something you should ignore, numb out for it, this isn't fun, well, then it means that you're coming from the part of you that's very finite in nature, not the part of you that's infinite and understands there's a lesson and wisdom within anything and everything that we do in life. And I think that's so important because especially with the work you're doing now with men, like, you know, men on average above the age of 40 have 0 people they can call on if shit gets rough, right? And, you know, I think that psychedelics have a huge component here of being able to fill in for rites of passage. I think that's a big part of what's missing in the overall realm of masculinity today. And I think that also there's a whole lot of shit talking about this whole idea of toxic masculinity, which is absolutely bullshit. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. There's just toxic behavior. And there's people that do that, right? But to the degree that we try to generalize those things, well, we end up very similar to like we've ended up in 2023, where what does a man do? I don't know, right? Like, what is safe for a man to do? Is it safe to hold the door, or is he going to be a misogynist because he ultimately thinks that women can't hold their own door if he holds the door, right? Like, these are the kind of things that a lot of us men are wondering about. And a lot of the reason I do men's work, I imagine a lot of the reason you do, is to allow men to tap back into their innate power and allow them to become unfuckwithable. Not that they don't care, not that they're being assholes, but that they're centered in who they are, and they're not going to allow anyone living in their own world to project onto them and allow them to still stay in their cycle. So I think that's amazing, man. It's beautiful work you're doing.
That's a great example, man. Like the toxic nature or the toxic narrative that seems to be present. Like I try to understand it as everybody possesses masculine, feminine energy, and it's not toxic. It's just the absence of understanding or awareness. And if you can become completely present in your day-to-day life by like, we have the big 9, we call them the 9 key optimization principles. And it's the way you start your day from the very moment you open your eyes. Like it's the 5-second count back from 5, get your fucking feet on the ground, get up, get after it. Like these principles set you up. And if you can remain present in every moment, doesn't always happen. I still am yet to master every single moment of presence, but I try to practice. I'll remove the try. I practice. And if you can remain present in every moment, things like washing the dishes, okay, it might be mundane, but how can this be the very fucking best moment that you wash the dishes? How can you do this to the best of your ability every single time? When you get up and you make your bed, make it as if it's going to be made for the next person to come and sleep in, and you want them to arrive and go, wow, what an amazing bed. Like, or, you know, if you're going to put your shoes on and you're going to tie up your laces, tie it up with the notion that, whoa, these feet, they get me from A to B. They carry this body around, this meat suit. I've got this protection on my feet that I can afford to have on my feet. Tie these laces. Like everything in every moment can be double tapped if you are present. And the awareness of, you know, self in that moment is what's going to change the game. And this is beyond the realm of psychedelics. Psychedelics drops you into that space right there and then. It's very hard to not have a smile when you're on psilocybin. Very hard. And it'll drop you in every moment, and it'll drop you into other moments where you're like, fuck, I wish I'd done that differently. And it's like, okay, next time I'm going to do it differently. Like those moments occur, But beyond the realm of psychedelics is this opportunity for integration where every single moment can be to the best of your ability, no matter what. Like it's a rock star effort in everything that you do, whether it be a podcast in a motel room. Like we're on the road, we're transiting. Is it ideal? Not for me, but I can find comfort in being like, I'm talking to my homie. We're talking about real shit. This is going to go to air. Thousands of people are going to listen to it. Who cares about the motel room, man? Like this is it, right? Like in every single moment you can be present and you can double tap. And that's where the realm of potential exists. And that's where we can really integrate the work and not be scared that, oh, if I do it that way, my ego is not going to like it. I'm going to respond. Who cares? Maybe. But next time, once you do it and you're aware that that just happened and you wanted to show up better next time. There should be no fear. There is, but there should be no fear. And we should start nurturing an environment and society that is less scared about being different and more excited and motivated to show up better. Right? That's where the potential of existence lies. The evolution of our society lay in that integration work.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because, I'll catch myself from time to time. Like I remember I had a huge cognitive shift one time, and I had done this many times before, but as anyone who does things like we're talking about here, some days, like when you're like, hey, remind yourself that you can wash these dishes. You have hands. Other people don't have hands. Sometimes it's just like, okay, cool. I feel better about it. Some days it's like earth shattering where you're like, holy shit, something just happened. So I remember one day I was with Rachel. It was last summer and we were leaving to get a coffee and we woke up a little late. Like we were just hanging out. I don't know what we were doing. And so we woke up late and I had this unconscious / semi-conscious thing of like, oh, I should have woken up earlier, just living in a not real version of reality, right? I should have woken up, earlier, but I didn't. Right. So I was living in this world of like, oh, I could have, should have, would have. So I wake up and we get going and we go to get into the car and go get our coffee. And I realized when I get in the car, oh, fuck, I forgot my keys. And I remember, oh, God, they're all the way upstairs. Right. But then what I do is I go inside and I'm like kicking and screaming a little bit, not literally, but just like fucking keys are fucking upstairs. Right. I get to the bottom of my stairs. And I just have this inkling to say, well, at least I have really awesome legs that work amazing. And I can get to the top of these stairs and go get them. And the second I said that, everything switched. And it went from annoyance and lack of love and gratitude to the abundance of gratitude of like, holy shit, there are some people right now that actually cannot climb stairs and they would fucking die to have my opportunity to forget their keys 100 times in a row just to walk to the top of the stairs. And it was like this eye-opening moment where I was like, whoa. There is so much to be grateful for. And again, this is a very similar realm or maybe even the same realm that psychedelics can enter you to, right? And that's why a lot of what I do in the show is telling people like, listen, yes, these medicines can show you amazing things, but if you're not also working on how to access them in a sober state of reality, you're missing the opportunity to have your entire life become a psychedelic, which for me, I fucking love psychedelics. I love tripping. So why wouldn't I want to do it all the time in a way that is actually manageable and sustainable, right? Yeah. Which is not by actually taking psychedelics every day, right? Like that could get crazy a little quick, right? So, it's these opportunities where I realize like, wow, like, there's so much magic to the world, and again, like this is why I think it's really pertinent as a human being to allow yourself to be messy, allow yourself to color outside of the lines. Allow yourself to discover what you're made of. And you know what? If you go out and you try to run across Australia and you don't make it, guess what? You still tried, right? And you put your best foot forward. But for you, you actually found out, holy shit, I can do that. And actually, like, yeah, it was challenging. I imagine there's many aspects of it that were very fucking challenging. But at the end of the day, I bet you decide to do it all over again. You know what I mean? Because, it's not just completing a goal, right? Like, and I know you'll identify with this. Yes, we can set goals for ourselves. We're going to run across the continent of Australia, any of these wild and insane goals. But the best part of it, at least when I've completed goals like this, and I imagine for you too, is not like the, hey, I did it, but it's more so like the, wow, I said I was going to do something. And I proved to myself that no matter what the challenge was, I had the ability to comfort myself enough to get myself pumped up to keep going, right? Not that I shit talked myself or told myself I was a pussy and needed to keep going or any of this toxic behavior we're talking about, right? But at the same time, being able to say, hey, as a grounded man in this case, I'm sure women have their own way of doing this, but as a grounded man, I was able to actually talk to myself. I was able to work my nervous system down. I was able to keep going, and I was able to love the journey of getting there. And I think there's nothing more beautiful in life than that. So it's just so amazing, man.
Agreed, brother. That resonates heavily.
Yeah. Well, Will, I mean, dude, this has been amazing, man. I can't believe we've already gone an hour, dude. Time with you flies, man. I can't wait for you to come back to the States, man. I'm super stoked to share some space in 3D with you again, or maybe 5D by that time. For everyone listening, me and Will got to meet in person last year. We had already known each other for a good amount of time, but we got to meet in person for Paul Check's sound healing, or shamanic sound healing workshop last year. Epic week. Me, you, and Brady living together for, what was that, like 5 days?
Yeah,
or something?
I think it was 5 days. And we journeyed together. That was epic.
Yeah, dude, it was so much fun. But Will, man, where can people find you? You know, where can they find out more about your new project you have going? Your content is out of this world, dude. I don't know who's doing your film editing, dude, but they are a gangster. So definitely, I'll be linking all of Will's info. But Will, where can people find you?
I'm most active right now on Instagram at themind.mechanic, and everything's kind of exploding through there right now. We're going to launch a YouTube channel in the next 2 weeks, which will have a lot more content in value, more education around the 9 key optimization principles, what we're doing with My Next Stop, which is our new company out here in Australia, and some different verticals there. But Instagram's the best place. Reach out. I'll get back. I manage my own Instagram. So now, I didn't through the run, but now I do. But yeah, reach out. I'm here and happy to provide value where I can.
Beautiful, man. And my last question for you, Will, is this. I think I've already asked you the last question I normally ask. So I'm going to make one on the fly here, right? So let's say someone listens to this conversation and they're really interested in the topic of psychedelics and how they relate to their own experience of life. What is the one piece of advice that Will would suggest to allow them to figure out how to connect with psychedelics to find out what they're made of in the world?
Oof. Big one.
I know. Simple questions, nothing so crazy simple.
Here. Reflecting back, it'd be foolish to say that psychedelics didn't change my life prior to me stepping into inner work. Like I took the opportunity to go sit with ayahuasca, and it was the first psychedelic I ever did. No, cannabis was the first, but the first heavy dose of medicine that I ever sat in a ceremonial environment, and it changed my life. But what I come to realize after sitting with Aya, there were so many other chapters I could have read and or wrote myself prior to stepping into that. And now knowing that, that's what fulfills me the most, is knowing that you don't have to go sit with psychedelics. There's a lot of inner work that you can be doing. And it can start by sitting around a campfire with a couple brothers, couple sisters, whatever it is, just sitting around the campfire, letting the portal open and trusting that if you say something, it's going to be received and somebody's going to be there to catch you. So before you go sit with psychedelics, even if you're feeling called, try that on for size first. Try how you feel staring into somebody's eyes for 2 to 5 minutes without breaking stride, or try sitting in a campfire and just saying something that makes you feel very vulnerable and scared. Try saying that and seeing what happens first. And if you can trust that and practice that, and like Mark says, get the reps in, then it's time for you to go sit, and then the veil will be lifted and the world will open up to you.
Oh, I love that, man. Yeah, it's not about doing 10,000 different kicks. It's about doing the same kick 10,000 times,
exactly right.
And again, like vulnerability, these kind of things, like, I mean, dude, it is incredible to me still just as incredible as the first day I tried it, how like just opening up and being honest and being vulnerable can lead to so much that's very similar to a psychedelic experience. I mean, like cathartic crying, these kind of things, very same. So dude, I love that, man. Okay, guys, Will and I have been friends for some time now. And if this episode wasn't already clear enough in evidence, he is one of the main individuals I think of when I think of the concept of integrating our psychedelic experiences into our day-to-day lives for maximum benefit of quality of life. For any of you looking to dive into Will's world and benefit from the incredible offerings he is putting together, check out the show notes for this episode, where I will be laying out all of the easiest ways to get in touch with him today. Will, thank you so much for agreeing to come back onto the show and riff with the listeners and me, for being such an absolute unit of love, inspiration, and determination, and for doing the work you do to empower the men of the world at large. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.
Aho. Bless you, brother.